Hi, this is John Leonetti for Pinnacle Equity Solutions, and I want to talk to business owners today about an important issue of sharing stock with managers in your business. And we see a lot of business owners who are looking at starting their exit planning, and the first thought is towards their existing management team and wanting to motivate these managers towards behaving like owners. And it's a real challenge for many owners to do this because the owner knows the type of effort and risk that it takes to run a business and takes a look at their management team and doesn't see that type of potential today. And they'd like to see it. So naturally, the first thing that many owners think about is, well, if I want them to think like owners, maybe I should make them actual owners. And then you start to do a calculation of the stock in your company and think maybe I should give some to them, and that would help me over this hurdle. It would help them improve their performance if they were actual owners. And what we want to do is share a couple of ideas with you if you're thinking along that way that are critical. Now, on the plus side, this would probably make a manager think and act more like an owner initially, and certainly the gesture will be received as it's intended, and that would be accomplished. However, there's a couple of key issues that we want to focus on in terms of whether or not the grant is meaningful and whether or not it would actually provide any benefit, or in this case, any liquidity to your managers. You see, if you're going to give stock to the managers, you want to understand if the amount of stock that they're getting is actually meaningful to their salary and towards their financial situation. Because if it isn't, it's not going to be much of a motivator. So it's more symbolic. You see, if a manager makes $150,000, $175,000 a year, and you're giving them $50,000 or $60,000 worth of stock, and they have $500,000 saved for retirement, it's not going to really factor into their decision making, and it's also not going to be a huge motivator for them to stay. It's not going to be a big retention tool. Also, you have to think through whether or not this manager is going to get any liquidity. How are they going to cash in on this stock? And that's another issue that we see all the time with business owners is they think that the stock will make managers act more like owners, but you have to think it through and say, how will eventually these managers cash in on this stock? And this is critically important towards your decision on whether or not to share the stock with the managers. And the tips that we want to leave you with, and we've listed the number of them here, of ways to resolve this dilemma. And this video is accompanied by a newsletter as well that you can get access to. But number one is take careful measure of whether using stock grants as a motivator or as a means to effectively transition ownership. If the managers are going to own the business one day, that's one thing. If you just want to grant stock to motivate them, that's another, and probably stock ownership is not the best tool. So that's the first thing. Are your managers going to be your future owners? If not, maybe there's another tool. We'll talk about that in a second. Number two, carefully evaluate the anticipated behavior of the recipient of the stock. People are motivated by many different things, and money is not always the leading contributor to an employee's motivation. Some want to succeed, some want recognition, some just want what they can take home today to pay their bills. And stock, a lot of times, isn't going to fill the bill for many of those folks. Again, a nice gesture, but not going to motivate those types of employees. Number three, have many and detailed conversations with your managers about the future of the company, their relative contribution, and your desire to align their interests before you decide to grant them stock, so that they're receiving it with a foundation of understanding as to what it means. That would actually improve the probability of their performance changing. And most importantly, and we see this quite often, do not make the mistake that other owners have made of substituting equity ownership for the need to provide leadership in your company. And what that means is giving them stock is not going to just solve the problem. You have to provide leadership, and you have to help your managers become future leaders within the business. And the simple granting of stock is usually not going to accomplish all of that. So forewarned is forearmed. Now there's a couple of alternatives that you can take a look at. That structure performance with the recognition of bonuses. And unlike W-2 bonuses and straight compensation, it withholds some of the pay based upon achieving some targets. There's phantom stock, there's stock appreciation rights, there are stock option grants. You can use a restrictive endorsement bonus arrangement using insurance to tie an employee in for some retention. And there's a number of other creative ways that you can recapitalize a company with non-voting stock and or hold back the actual equity ownership but still compensate and reward the managers. So it's John Leonetti for Pinnacle Equity Solutions discussing whether or not granting equity and stock ownership in your business to your managers is the best move to motivate them as part of your exit planning.